And we are live. You are watching the Detective Diaries. I'm your host, Greg Lawson. This is where I meet interesting and strange people along my paranormal journey and bring them in here to talk with them. Today, I'm going to modify my interesting and strange to wonderful and beautiful. Today, I'm going to have Andrea Perron on, and it's going to be awesome. Last week, I had, last week, I had Tim Shaw, who is a medium, and he came on and we had a really good conversation. And next week, or actually next Thursday, I'm going to have Dakota Lawrence on. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I'm trying to sucker him in. So before we get into a whole bunch of stuff, I just want to bring her in, and I don't want to just monopolize all of our time. So I'm going to add Andrea in. Andrea, can you hear me?
I can perfectly. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, it's lagging just a little bit. Sometimes it takes just a few seconds for everything to catch up.
Okay.
I posted on my Facebook that I had suckered you into coming on here and talking with me. Yeah. I'm so excited. I honestly mean this. You're one of my favorite people, not just in the paranormal, just you're one of my favorite people. You're just, if all of us could just be a little bit more like you, the world would be a really good place.
I feel the same way about you. I do.
Yeah. Well, I just know that we could use a little bit more kindness, a little more love running around today.
Yeah. Of course, I'm crazy about your wife too.
Yeah, she's. I'm guessing she's listening right now, or she's watching. Hi, Lynn.
Right. Hi, Lynn.
So what's going on? What do you? Let me catch up with the folks that are watching. Andrea you're an author, but you're also an experiencer too. And I don't know how you define yourself, but you got into the paranormal when you were a kid. And so I think a lot of people are very fascinated by that. So I guess mainly that little house in Burrville, Rhode Island.
Yeah. I think that more than me getting into the paranormal got into me. I didn't know what paranormal was. I was a kid. I didn't know the word supernatural. For me, ghosts was about, a potential costume for Halloween.
Right.
It was. And we just thought that we were buying, the house actually is quite large. A big old farmhouse that is an original colonial farmhouse, which there aren't that many of them left. So my mother was fascinated by it because of its antiquity. And she didn't even factor in, how cold and uncomfortable a place it would be. It was just clapboard. That was it. It was built from clapboard. It was completed as it stands now in 1736. The land for it was deeded from the original Roger Williams, who founded the colony of Rhode Island in 1680.
Wow.
And, it was, people ask me all the time, would you ever want to live there again? And my answer is absolutely not. And that's not because I'm afraid of anything in that house. I'm not. I don't ever want to be that cold again. I never that uncomfortable again. I live in Florida now. I live in paradise. I'm not going back to New England. I need a haircut.
You look great.
God. It's a mess. Okay, here. All right, we're gonna do this. There we go.
All right. So for those that have just tuned in, you're listening to the Detective Diaries, and we're talking with Andrea Perron, and she is an author and you're a paranormal explorer too, I think. But you're also mainly known as an author. I'm going to throw this up real quick. your House of Darkness, House of Light series, I am ashamed to say that I have I've only read your first book. Lynn has the second and possibly the third, I think. But yeah, that was something that really interests me, was your perspective, because I know they made the Conjuring movie, based on your family, but I like going back and hearing the real person's story. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and the thing is that it bears no resemblance to the film at all, at all. And since you've read the first book, you know that it introduces my readers to my family as a perfectly normal family, and then shows you everything in print that happened, and precisely the way that it happened, to catapult us to that farm.
Right.
And I truly do believe, Greg, that we were supposed to live there. We were supposed to live there. We were supposed to stay there for the 10 years that we did. And then 30 years later, I was supposed to tell the story, when people were like ready for this. Because in a lot of ways, it's so much more intense than the film.
Right.
But it's also, I think that it treats it with the proper balance that it deserves. The proper, it treats it with integrity.
Right.
It's not a horror story. It's a love story with a wicked supernatural twist.
Right.
Most families could not have endured what my family endured in that house and come out whole.
Yeah. Well, and
held us together.
yeah, and from my background, I look for correlations and I look for corroborative support for the story, and that house absolutely, has a backstory in it. That I'd like to get into more. But what's more important is, are you drinking anything?
No, actually, I just had my father ran out and got us a pizza, and I wolfed down some Coke to go with it, because you can't eat a pan pizza without Coke. You can't.
Okay, well, I was just going to check.
It should be illegal if it's not. I mean, you would be the person to ask, but no, I am not drinking anything. But I did appreciate seeing what you were consuming looked yummy.
It was.
Prior to us doing the show.
Yeah.
And we will have a time again. I know in my heart that we will have a time when I'll never forget our trip to Salt Lake City, Utah.
Here we are.
Got to spend so much time together, and it was so lovely. And it snowed there yesterday, in Utah. They got about a foot of snow, and we were outside that beautiful old, this shot was taken when we were outside that really beautiful old hotel that we stayed in. Do you remember the name of it?
Oh, I don't, but I know Lynn will. She'll post on here what it is.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, we had Chip and Greta and Mary, and I think Lynn is the one that took the photograph, so sadly she's not in it. But we got to we sat at the same table at the event, so we got to spend a great deal of time together. Yes, there we are. That's you, boy. I'll tell you, you're prepared for your show. I'll tell you what. I wouldn't even know where to dig those photos up, and I know I downloaded them, but where are they? I don't know what file they're in. I don't know.
Yeah, that was what was great about that not only, I think the venue was great. I love Salt Lake.
Yeah, beautiful.
Just a beautiful, beautiful town, all about weirdness, and it was great. But the great thing for me was that it was small, and I got to hang out with you and Chip, and spend more time than what we normally do at these conferences.
Yes, we did. And we went out and had a wonderful dinner together. And actually, a couple of times, I think we ate together 2 or 3 times over the
Yeah.
course of that weekend and just laughed and carried on like fools and had a wonderful time. And it's just,
Well,
I don't know.
what you can't see in this picture is the bathroom to your left and Chip on the other side of the bathroom on his. That was so funny.
Yeah, and he had that big blow up ghost next to him or something. Was it a ghost? It was a blow up something.
Yeah, I think it was a ghost.
Doll. Let's just call it that and let people use their imagination.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was hysterical, and we laughed and we played and we had so much fun, and it gave me an opportunity to pull you and Lynn into my heart in such a way that you will reside there forever. And we had some really in-depth conversations that
Right.
weekend. It was marvelous. I learned so much from you, and sadly I've only read one of your books. But I swear to God, before I leave this planet, I'm going to read them all, because you're a wonderful writer, and who you are, the essence of who you are, comes through your work. And I know that you believe the same of me, because we both write from the heart.
Right.
We both do.
Yeah.
It's the only way to do it. It's the only way to really express yourself to others and have it be authentic. And you can hear in my reading of your work your authentic voice. I just admire you so much. I thank you for your service. Things are really tough in this country right now, and I am so proud to say I know a member of the police force, a detective who is salt of the earth, the pinnacle that everyone should emanate, that's on any force in this country, emulate. I just really admire your work and what you've done for your community over the course of your career.
Thanks. A lot of my supervisors would disagree with you.
Oh, well, let me talk to them.
So yeah, we had, I think, is that where we had the conversation about animals and whether they have spirits and
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons I was distressed, because we did that live feed from the farm a few weeks ago, and I so desperately wanted you to be part of that. And unfortunately, one of the producers overbooked the week. He, in his haste to make sure that everything, went as planned,
right.
he actually booked an extra day. He took a 7-day event and he made it an 8-day event on paper. And none of us caught it, because we were all looking at the schedule day by day by day. And when I realized what had happened and that he was in trouble, he had more people than he had time.
Right.
I was so upset and disappointed about that, because one of the things that I really wanted to bring you on to that event to discuss was the inordinate amount of animals that we saw in and around the house. We saw spirit animals in the barn. We had a cat in the house. And it was the thing that was the strangest thing to me. And it's actually, we're working on the second screenplay. The first one's done for my trilogy of movies. And it's in the second one where the cat just goes running through the bathroom and it leaps through a wall that used to be a door when it was alive. And so it was in an alternate dimension, and it was going through a door that was there during the course of its lifetime that had been removed. And I wanted to discuss that with you because I found that so fascinating. And I was thrilled to have another cat. I didn't care if it was a spirit cat or if it was alive. I had another cat.
Right.
So, it was one of the things that I wanted to bring you on and show you that space in the house and how that happened. But the time will come when we are together again. The time will come. I know that you will get to go there and
It'll be,
feel the energy of that place because it really is life altering. Once
yeah.
you've been to the farm and you have felt what it feels like to be in a portal cleverly disguised as a farmhouse, you never really think about anything the same way again. It stays with you, and it certainly has with me. And people ask me all the time, in the course of my travels and stuff, ask me all the time, uh, if I dream or if I have nightmares about the house. And I don't think I've ever had a nightmare about the house. I really don't, but I dream about it all the time. And it's really a part of me, and it's intrinsic to my consciousness.
Well, yeah, it's that. In my opinion, it seems to be that is your foundation. You
It
know
is.
that that's all these beliefs, all these experiences, and everything. Just kind of solidify and culminate in that. For those of you who might have just tuned in, you can go down to the comments and comment where you're watching from and ask Andrea any questions you would like to ask. If you share this broadcast, it would be really, really great. If you like and share it, it would be awesome. Andrea, you mentioned saying, things that are a little scary, and you said, you'd like to have a cat, whether it was a scary cat or whether it was a regular cat. The History Collection has a really cool article, and it talks about the 16 reasons why the true story behind The Conjuring, which is your story, is even creepier than the movie.
Yeah.
And so the movie, you're making a movie, you have to sensationalize things, right?
Well, I think in some ways there was some hyperbole involved, but for the most part, I think that they toned it down compared to, they went formula. They,
Right.
used Hollywood method. There was no exorcism in the house. My mother was not possessed. My mother was attacked by something during the course of a seance that occurred in the house. And it was a life-threatening situation for her. She was picked up and tossed from the middle of one room into another in the chair in which she was sitting. A horrible thing to witness. I was 15 years old when that happened. But there were also things that happened in that house that gave me hope and gave me faith. And when things were hellish, all any of us had to do was say, oh God, help me. And it was over. So I know that there is a higher power. I know that there is good and evil in the world, and that good conquers evil and love conquers fear. And so even though, the portrayal of my family and the way that the story was outlined and the emphasis that was put on the Warrens was blown up to be more than it actually was. I mean, they made it look like the Warrens moved in with us. They made it look like we lived there 3 weeks instead of 10 years. They couldn't compress a 10-year story into a 2-hour movie.
Right.
They did what they did because they had to.
You're talking about the Warrens here.
That's not the Warrens. That's my
What?
Greg and Dana, who I adore.
Okay. I thought those were the Warrens. I didn't know. Okay. So you're talking about these people.
Those people.
Those people. All right.
Yeah.
I thought that was a great picture of them, though. It's like
every picture of Greg and Dana is a great picture.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna keep showing this one because I keep asking them. Try to get in touch with them to be on the Detective Diaries, and they don't call me back. So
I'll call them for you. I will. I'll get on their case. Don't you worry about that.
So yeah, and that was something that I thought was interesting. And you're right. The Conjuring movie was the Warren story.
Yes, it really was. The movie was based on the case files of Ed and Lorraine Warren, and they took tremendous liberties with that. Just to, well, for instance, I'll give you a case in point. The picture you just showed with Dana holding the doll,
Yeah.
which they transformed into the Annabelle doll because I think it was Milton Bradley or Parker Brothers, one of the two, that created Raggedy Andy. Raggedy Ann and Raggedy Andy said, "No, you cannot use our doll in your movie," and so they created something much creepier. But that had no correlation with our story at all. And I will be answering that question for the rest of my natural born days. And that's how cynical Hollywood can be, because they took that doll and weaved it into the movie about my family so that they could set up the next movie, which was Annabelle. And so we didn't know about the doll. We never saw the doll. We had knew no history of it. We were little kids when the Warrens showed up at our house. So my father did not, warmly welcome them in. He didn't trust them. He didn't know them. He thought that they were there to exploit us. And my mother was grateful to have someone who would believe her. And she didn't call them. She did not seek them out. In fact, it was Keith Johnson who had come to the house several months earlier. And we'll never figure out how that all happened because he said mom called him and she's like, "I never called anybody. So I don't know why you're here, but I'll talk to you."
Right.
And then they went subsequently, his group went to I guess a seminar that the Warrens were doing at the University of Rhode Island. And he's the one that told them about our predicament. And then they waited until the night before Halloween in 1973 and came to the house. And my mother let them in because she was a cordial, trusting person, and it was freezing outside. And she let them in to warm up. She thought they were an older couple that was lost out in the woods. And then they identified themselves as who they were. And it was, and that was the beginning of about a year and a half. They came 5 times to investigate the house after mom told them some of the things that were happening there.
Right.
And then the last time they came back, it was just to make sure she was alive, because the night of the seance, that was in question when they left the house. My father told them that they had to leave. He didn't use very pretty language. He was not very well behaved.
Your dad?
Oh my God.
I know your dad.
Vernacular that night. I did. He was wild, out of his mind.
Wow.
And ended up punching Ed in the face, and I think he broke his nose. It was bleeding anyway, and I know that because I had to clean the blood up off the wood floor, and it was a really bad scene, and I don't believe that the Warrens were trying in any way to harm us. And there are people in my family who don't feel the same way that I do, but I really do think that they were attempting to help us. They were just in over their heads in a really bad situation that escalated, and through no fault of their own, because they brought a medium with them who they trusted to conduct the seance, and she committed spiritual malpractice. She threw open wide the doors to the netherworld and invited everything in so that she could determine who the culprit was in the house. And you don't do that. You sure don't do that when 4 out of 5 kids in the family are actually still in the house. And my father objected to the seance going on, and my mother kind of shut down emotionally and became almost catatonic. And because she was the weakest link at the table, whatever attacked her. And so, I tell folks that I have seen the dark side of existence. That's why I deliberately choose to live in the light, is I know that evil exists. I've seen it. I've witnessed it with my own eyes. And, they'll say, was it a demon? Was it a demon? Well, I don't know if demons exist. I've never seen a demon. I don't know. I don't know. I just know that whatever it was had all the power that it needed to have claimed her life, and it didn't want to kill her, or it would have. Um, it wanted to make its presence known to everybody else that was in that house that night, and it did.
And there was a woman that committed suicide in the house in the early 1800s.
There
Did he?
were a number of people that died on that property, and probably some that we will never know. The records history, the history back then was kept almost selectively. It was and scattered, and things were chronicled, but then stored elsewhere. But there were a number of deaths in the house and on the property, and that we had verified through the Black Book of Burrowville, which the town historian brought to our attention very early on when I was writing the book, my friend Pat Mertens. But there was Mrs. John Arnold, the town historian at the time when we moved there, told my mother, and his name was John McEachern, I believe, and he told my mom that Mrs. John Arnold was found hanging in the barn in the late 1700s, I think like 1797, after her husband had died. And she was 93 years old and was taken down, according to him. And, we have no way of verifying this, but according to him, she was taken down and carried into the house because suicide back then in that day and age was considered something that was so heinous that you couldn't even be buried in your family plot if you did that. And she is buried in the family plot in the old Arnold Cemetery, which is about 2 miles from the house. But of course, back then, that was their property too, because when the farm was originally deeded, it was thousands of acres. And it was 200 acres when we bought it. It had been, some of it had been subsequently sold off, but she is buried in the original Arnold Cemetery. And the house was built by the Richardson family, and then through marriage, it became the Arnold estate. But it was all one extended family that lived and died in that house over the course of 8 generations. And we were the first outsiders that had ever moved in. And so I'll never understand why I felt like such a familial attachment to the place, because there's nothing in our ancestry that connects us with either family on either side.
Wow.
So I don't know what it is that drew me to that house, but honest to God, Greg, I told you in Utah, and I'll tell you again, it is the only place that has ever felt like home to me. And every place else I've ever lived just felt like a temporary pit stop on my way to someplace else.
Hey, Will Norton's asked, he wishes that your books were on Audible. Are you planning on trying to get your books on Audible anytime?
It would take me about, I think it would take me about 120 hours to read each one of those books. They're 500 pages a piece.
Yeah.
Well, the last one's 400 pages. And nobody else can do it for me. It's just one of those very intimate stories that
Right.
I would have to be the one to do it. And so at some point I will do it. And I have also, for my new book, I've had a lot of requests for that as well, that it be on Audible. And I know a lot of people read that way now. But for now, in lieu of getting into a studio and starting that recording process and spending countless hours doing it, for now, it's just going to have to stay in the written word because I don't have the time. I thought that this downtime, this COVID-19, stay at home, lock yourself in place downtime, was
Right.
going to actually be a bit of a respite for me. And I guess for the first few weeks it was. I did a lot of sleeping. A lot of people, if they feel depressed or overwhelmed, they eat a lot. And some sleep a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I did both. And it wasn't even that I was depressed. You know, it's not that I was depressed. I mean, worried, yes,
Yeah.
concerned, very concerned. My sister is a frontline worker, and she lives with my mother, or my mother lives with her. They live together, and she is a worker at Publix supermarkets, and she's a professional cake decorator and works in the bakery and has for years and years. And
That's good.
I was, yeah, well, not so good when I visit because she brings something really yummy every single night for mom. Yeah, okay, all right. My mother is that big, and both of us are tubbies. So who do you think eats it all?
Hey, Karen is asking, have you heard any disembodied voices in your experiences at the house? She said that she thinks she heard one during the live stream. Um,
Oh, well, I hear disembodied voices from time to time. Yes, I do. And we did at the house. And I didn't hear anything going on during the live stream, Karen. I don't know if it happened while I was on, but if it did, I probably wouldn't have heard it because I had, I was focused on what I was saying. But I had a lot of people tell me that they heard voices and they heard things. And there were a number of manifestations that occurred over the course of that week. But yes, I hear disembodied voices from time to time. Um, and sometimes I don't hear them until after because, well, for instance, a few years ago, I was doing a lecture at Bathsheba Sherman's gravestone. Not a lecture, really. I was just talking to the people that were there. And one of our friends who worked at the time with Rise Up Paranormal, I think he's still with the group, with Ken DeCosta's group, Rise Up in Rhode Island. He was recording it, unbeknownst to me. And a couple of days later, after I got back to Florida, he sends me a clip of, he's like, you're not going to believe this, and so I hit the button and I'm listening, and I'm just listening to myself talking. And so I thought, oh, well, that's nice. Cody recorded what I had to say. And then clear out of the blue above everybody is a woman. It sounds like with a high pitched voice screams the name Bathsheba at the top of her lungs.
wow.
I can send it to you. It's amazing to hear. It's amazing. Um,
And
and
for those that don't know Bathsheba, can it kind of catch them up on that?
Well, Bathsheba got a really bad rap. I mean, Mrs. Warren is the one that came into the house and she said, I sense a malignant presence in this house. Her name is Bathsheba. Well, Mr. McEachern had told my mother about this woman that lived in town. Actually, she didn't live in town. She lived over about a mile away, as the crow flies, at the Sherman estate, Sherman Farm. And she was married. Her name is Bathsheba Sherman. She was married to Judson Sherman. And according to him, there was an inquest when she was a young woman, I guess freshly married. I don't know. We don't really have very much history on her at all. But she was actually not an Arnold or a Richardson. She was born of the Thayer and Taft families, a union between them. And they were very affluent. And if you go to Brown University in Providence, you'll see the names Thayer and Taft everywhere. They had a lot to do with the building of Brown University, the establishing of that college back then. And they, I believe, followed Roger Williams down from the Massachusetts Bay Colony and decided to take up residence in the colony of Rhode Island. Well, she married Judson Sherman and moved to the Sherman Farm, which was a house really not far from ours. And there were only a few farms in the area at the time. So, yes, everybody knew everybody else, undoubtedly. But Mr. McEachern told my mother that she had been accused of murdering an infant in
Oh,
our house,
wow.
and that the baby was in her care. We don't know if it was her baby or if it was somebody else's baby, but apparently the infant died, and then after being examined, was found that a needle had been impaled at the base of its skull. And there was an inquest. The town that we lived in didn't have, it wasn't incorporated, it was just a village at the time of many, several villages in the area. And so in the town of Chepachet, which was the county seat, there was apparently an inquest held, and she said, I had nothing to do with this. I don't know what happened or why the baby died. Of course, obviously, I'm paraphrasing. We don't have all the background information on that. My mother did find one article about it up in the archives of Clark University in Worcester, Massachusetts. Why it was there, I do not know. But unfortunately, that was copied and went to Mrs. Warren in my mother's notebook of the history of the house that she had compiled to the best of her ability. And my mother loaned that notebook to Mrs. Warren so that she could make copies of everything that was in it. And she never got it back.
Oh, wow.
It, it was gone.
Well,
And
hey, we've been doing this for 36 minutes. For those of you who are tuning in a little bit late, you're watching the Detective Diaries. We're talking with Andrea Perron, what would you call the inspiration for the movie The Conjuring? I think most people know that movie one way or another, but she has written books on that particular subject and on the house, and they are House of Darkness, House of Light, and you have a trilogy, right? Do you have
yeah.
are all three of them done?
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah,
The
I
last
could,
one was published in 2013 or 2014.
okay.
2014, right after I published the third and final volume, right after the movie came out. The following, I think it was, oh gosh, what was it? August. It came out in August of 2014. In fact, the third book came out 7 years to the day that I started writing the first book, which was very odd. That was very strange. But just to finish up with Bathsheba, I've tried to be her defender because I don't think that you should accuse anybody of murder unless you have proof, some evidence to back up your claim, and there was none. Bathsheba is buried in hallowed ground in the Riverside Cemetery in Harrisville, alongside her whole family, her husband Judson, um, and as well as her 4 children. Only one survived her. The other 3 died before the age of 4. We don't know what Mr. McEachern said is accurate, but I do know he was in his 90s when we met him in 1971, and he knew Bathsheba, and he didn't have a nice word to say about her. He said that she was brutal to her farmhands, that she was just a very mean-spirited woman. But I there's no proof that she ever practiced witchcraft, which the people in the town accused her of. There's no proof anywhere that she sold the soul of an infant to the devil for eternal youth and beauty. The word was, according to him, that she was a ravishingly beautiful woman, and that the women in town kind of hated her, and the men looked at her with rapacious eyes.
Right.
And she had a reputation that followed her into death. And I am her great defender in that I devoted a whole chapter in the third book called Season of the Witch that delineates the entire history of the use of that word um, in um, in the written word anywhere chronicled in history, going back to the mid 1500s. And what a dangerous word that is. Even to this day, that word can get you killed in some parts of this world. Do you want to go out, honey? Hold on. There's my baby. There you go. That's my puppy.
What do you?
She hears
Oh, okay.
grandpa. No, she hears grandpa with ice cream. She can hear through the door that he got ice cream and heard his spoon on the side of the bowl. And now she's going to. She's so
Nice.
spoiled. Oh my God. She'll be back. But anyway, um, so anyway, I devoted a whole chapter of that book to not absolving her because I can't do that, but at least giving her the benefit of the doubt. Mrs. Warren is the one that dubbed her, the Wicked Witch, so to speak.
Right.
But the spirit that was haunting my mother and that was mean to my mom was not her, because Bathsheba died in 1885 of complications from a stroke. She was born in 1812 and she died in 1885. And the spirit that was haunting and taunting my mother in that farmhouse was dead long before Bathsheba was born. Interestingly, about 3 or 4 months ago, some friends of mine who are paranormal investigators and researchers were conducting an investigation at the farm. And in the course of their research, they discovered that Bathsheba's husband died on that property.
Well, and that's what Katie was asking as far as going back. The history of the land. There's
Yeah.
even before the house, I guess. There's no records of any of that stuff, but there's occupation there. So
Yeah, yeah. I love Katie, by the way. She's a member of the Feel Good Do Gooders, the Rose Colored Glasses Wearers, and the Buttercup Brigade, which is
yeah,
my fan page. And she's always contributing. She's just a lovely, lovely woman. Yeah, oh my God, I got a tribe. I'll tell you what, I got the best people in the whole world.
yeah,
I tell folks all the time, the happiest people I know are obsessed with death, but it's not even that they're obsessed with death. They're obsessed with finding out about the existence of an afterlife, which is, all the more reason to be a paranormal researcher.
right,
Uh, but I for me, it's not a matter of belief. It's not a matter of faith. It's not speculation on my part. I know there is something beyond our mortal existence, but I still can't tell you exactly what it is, how it manifests, why it is. It just is. And to me, that's the miraculous thing, and people who are historians want every detail and they want to know everything about that farmhouse and who lived there and when and so on and so forth. And it's like putting together this gigantic multi-dimensional puzzle that we will never complete because we can't find all the pieces. But for me personally, the miracle is that they exist. The miracle is that we saw other beings in that house, and sometimes full body apparitions, and sometimes they interacted with us. And that to me is the most amazing phenomenon of all. And interestingly, we had not even been living at the farmhouse for a full year when I had my first conscious contact with UFOs at the farm. Now, I think that I probably had contact prior to that and either blocked it or did not recall what I saw or mistook it for something else prior to living at the farm. But there was no mistaking what I saw when I was 13. And that was my personal paradigm shift. That's changed everything for me.
well, and that was something I kind of wanted to lead into, but I have to throw this up here. Brad Blair says House of Darkness, House of Light is much better than the actual Conjuring movie. Obviously, a lot of people like reading the book better than the movie. But in this case, you got a lot of fiction on one side and you got the real experience on the other side coming from you. He also sent a picture.
Okay, Brad Blair is probably drunk. He drinks a lot of beer. He's the hold my beer guy. And, as far as I know, he's probably buried under 2 or 3 feet of snow right now because he lives in the frozen tundra. So we have to take everything that Mr. Blair says with a pound of salt. I love him and Tim Ellis like they're brothers to me. I mean, those 2 guys. I'm telling you, how lucky am I, Greg? How lucky am I that over the last decade of my life, if you had asked me a decade ago if I would be where I am now, and I'm not talking about Florida, I'm talking about where I am in the paranormal. I was the new kid on the block. I mean, most of the people that I know have been doing this for decades and decades, right. and for me to get to meet individuals like I've met, like yourself and Lynn and Tim and Brad and their whole team, Bupers, oh my God. Well, you've been to the event, so you know what it is.
I'm wearing a shirt right now.
There you go. There you go.
So, yeah, that event, I think, up there is probably the best event. And those of you who are watching, if you've never gone to the MI Paracon, if you're going to go to a Paracon, that's the one to go to.
That's the one to go to. Yeah.
And if you're watching and you like this broadcast, please click like down there. You can go into the comments, post some comments. Andrea and I will then go in later and answer your comments or address them. And if you share this broadcast, it will help us out greatly. So that brings us to what you said as far as the UFO experience.
Yeah, they don't look like that. They don't.
I thought I'd throw that up there for you. But, and I know they don't look like that guy, right?
They don't. I mean, Oh my God, how cute is that? How cute is that? Yeah, and, Brad's got a little too much time on his hands to, be futzing around with stuff like that. But it's interesting because, it was at Sault Ste. Marie. It was at the Michigan Paracon that I first started doing with groups of people what I had always done myself alone, privately. And I didn't know if it would work. And I did not know. It was about, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years ago. And I went outside and there were about maybe 50 or 60 people outside. And there was some guy out there that supposedly had a spirit box out in the driveway or the parking lot. My hair looks like hell. Like hell. Like,
your hair looks fine.
No, it really doesn't. There. Okay, we'll do that. All right. Oh, now that's even worse. Oh my God. Are they ever going to open the salons back up? Really? This is nuts. Here, we're tucking this in up under there. And plus the screen's all backwards, so I can barely function in this medium. Barely function. So I was out there and I was just, doing my thing, and I sing to them. I mean, if there are any people who are UFO aficionados out there and who are familiar with Dr. Stephen Greer with the CE5 work that he does, I do what he does. I just do it a little differently than he does. He uses guided meditation, and I sing to them. And it's not that they come when called to me. They're already here. They just make their presence known to me. And so I was doing that. And God bless her soul. Rosemary came up to me. Rosemary Ellen Guiley, who I considered a mentor, a friend, a wonderful woman in my life. Wonderful. And she came up to me. I mean, talk about emulating someone. You know, I mean, she'd written like 67 books at her passing, and actually published Tim and Brad's Supernatural Haunts, which is fabulous, by the way. If you haven't read it, Greg, you should read it. It's great. Boy, I'll tell you what, the Upper Peninsula is just, you think Utah's weird, honey, they got nothing on the Upper Peninsula. Hold on just a second. We have company. Come here. Oh, we have company. Oh, this is the Princess Buttercup, who just had ice cream, who you shouldn't. You're going to turn into a fatty patty. I'm telling you right now what's going to happen. She can't stand it when I am doing a show, if I'm on doing anything, and she's like, I need to get some screen time. I need to get some screen time. It's important. Yes, I know. I can't take you. I can't take you up places. All right, go see Grandpa and see what else you can beat him out of.
Yeah, you know, we have a connection with animals, so you know.
Yeah, yes, I know you do. So we're out there, and I'm just, like singing a little bit. Most everybody had wandered off. There weren't that many people outside still, maybe 30. And I'm just out there singing at the top of my lungs in the middle of a huge parking lot. And all of a sudden, these vessels started coming in from different directions. And people are like, oh my God, there's one. Oh my God, there's one. Oh my God, there's one. And I was just like, oh my God, it worked. I was shocked that it worked. And so Rosemary walked up to me after, and she said, that was the most amazing thing I've ever seen, and you're the most powerful woman I know. And coming from her, I was floored. Well, the next morning, I go into the conference center, which was at that time downstairs, because it was a smaller event. We have since expanded, like they're going to need a bigger casino. I walked in, and Zappis, who was set up a couple of tables away from me, close enough to be able to throw things at me regularly, walks in, and he throws the local Sault Ste. Marie newspaper down on the table and looks at me and says, you did this. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, open up the newspaper. Look at it. And on the front page of the newspaper, it said that there had been 185 calls to the Sault Ste. Marie Police Department the night before about UFO reports in the sky. And I said, well, yeah, I guess I did. Well, he's like, well, I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. I'm like, okay, you deal with demonology. You collect haunted items. And you investigate and interact with dead people, but you're afraid of UFOs. And he's not the only one, Greg. There are a number of high-profile people in this field that I could name, but I won't, that are terrified of them.
He's afraid of that abduction, that whole thing. You know what they do to you. The stories, I don't know what to tell you.
I'm not even going to respond to that, because really almost anything that I would say would be inappropriate. So I'm just
I got into an argument. This was in 1994. I was in Greenwich in England, and I went to the observatory there. I forget what it's called.
And, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I can't.
And they were given the presentation, and this scientist, this guy that's supposed to be objective to science, says we're the only life in the universe.
Okay, so he was a PhD with no common sense.
Yeah, how in the world can there not be something else with all of these stars and planets and galaxies? And it's got to be something else.
How could you even make such a unilateral statement like that? I mean, such hubris.
I know.
People speak from fear on this subject, Greg. You know that. We talked about that.
Oh yeah.
last year. I mean, they do. They speak from fear about this. This is like a knee-jerk reaction for them because they don't know what they're interacting with, or if they're going to be taken, or whatever. And so this is a fear-based carbon unit reaction to the existence of extraterrestrials. Even, God rest his soul, Stephen Hawking, one of the most brilliant minds that ever lived. One of the last things that he put out in the world prior to his death was a treatise about extraterrestrials. And, to basically sum it up, what he said was, yes, they're here, but don't talk to them. We don't know what their intentions are.
I remember him. I remember that information coming out.
Yeah.
And,
Well, I do talk to them, and I do know what their intentions are, and their intentions are completely and utterly peaceful. And now, for anybody who doubts my veracity on this subject, go back in the archives of the New York Times for December 26th of 2017, and see the headline about the USS Nimitz and this disclosure that came right from the Department of Defense, directly from the Department of Defense. And they have since subsequently released more information. Now, what they're releasing versus what they know is, there is no, you're comparing apples to onions, I mean.
You know what's crazy? What you just said, what's absolutely nuts is 1 hour before we did this broadcast, I talked to one of the guys that was involved in that Nimitz reporting.
Wait,
go figure that one out. How bizarre is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all right. I refer to the government as the lying liars who lie.
Yeah.
And they've been keeping an awful lot from us because they treat us like babies, feeding us problem, like we just can't handle the truth. Well, there are an awful lot of people on this planet that have had close encounters of the mind-blowing kind.
Right.
And I'm one of them.
Speaking of the truth, we've been doing this for 57 minutes and 30 seconds, which means we got 2.5 minutes.
Oh, okay. Well, then I guess, all right, speaking of the truth, I'm going to have to come back on your show because we just scratched the surface.
I know. Tell us what's going on. Tell us what you got coming up.
Well, pretty much everything's been canceled.
Like everybody
else. Have to sue on the docket. I don't even know if there'll be any planes to get us there, if it's still on or not. But most everything's been canceled.
Yeah.
And so I've been doing a lot of this kind of stuff, which is great. Right from the comfort of my man cave, and just working on an extended, I'm putting in an extra chapter in my new book, A Wonder to Behold, because most of the book is about the pending paradigm shift. Well, guess what, folks? It's here. So I kind of needed, in terms of completing the thought, needed to add a few more pages to it, which I'm almost done with, and a few more photographs. And I've just been basically working from home. And loving life in seclusion, because that's actually my favorite way to be. When I'm not out on the road traveling and living out of suitcases and sleeping in strange beds in different hotels, which are lovely, but they're not my own bed.
Right.
I'm home, or I'm with my mom up in Georgia. So I'm going to go see my mom in a week or so and spend a couple of weeks with her and check in on her. And then just, take it. I'm just flying with it, hon. I'm sure you're doing the same thing,
Yeah.
At some point, it'll be safe to reemerge into the world, and we'll just do that then.
Right. So they should go, anybody who wants to kind of follow what's going on, they should go to Buttercup Brigade on Facebook, right?
Yep, that's my fan page, is Buttercup Brigade, or they can find me at House of Darkness, House of Light, which is my book and author page. I have a main page. I'm revamping. I'm working right now with a webmaster to revamp my website, House of Darkness, House of Light, because it's old and stale, kind of like me. And it just needs some love and attention. We're doing that. I got a lot of irons in the fire. We'll talk
Right.
about it more next time I come.
I cannot thank you enough. I love you. I think you're an amazing person, and I can't wait to see you in person again, which hopefully, I'm assuming it's going to be in 2021. Yeah. So thank you, and I will be in touch.
Thank you, and give my love to Lenny. Big hug and kiss.
I will. Love you. Thanks.
Love you.
That was Andrea Perron, the inspiration of The Conjuring, the author of House of Darkness, House of Light, an intuitive, amazing person, and we could use a lot more of her. So next Thursday, let's see, today's Tuesday, next Thursday, June 11th, we're going to have Dakota Lawrence on. Dakota is a medium. He is real cool, and he is very entertaining also. So if you want to find out what Dakota's all about and ask him any questions, give us a look on Thursday, June 11th at 6 p.m. Until then, hopefully Jeff Belanger and Dave Schrader and Aaron Sager and everybody else in the paranormal field is doing good, and hopefully we'll see you soon. That's it. Thank you. Talk to you later.